Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Sean Fitz. Nate Bauer joining us in one moment once he gets rid of the mysterious sound effects in the background of his shot. For once, it's not me. I'm so excited.
You were so happy when he was lagging and it was not you. So I'm happy to see. I'm happy to see the empty threats worked and Xfinity now bows to you. But that's good. But hey, Nate lives downtown. The students are back, so I don't know where the music's coming from, but he's got some acoustics to work with there.
Every time I've been over there, it's been bro country. So if they've now switched to like girly pop music, first off, love it. I love the chaos and diversity. But secondly, I would be surprised. This show is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here, and nobody gets you ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors. Swing into your Academy store or shop online at academy.com. Find grills, canopies, jerseys, and more. Be a watch party legend with gear from top brands like Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour at undefeatable prices every day. Be sure to check out Harrisburg and York locations if you're here watching, because we've got a ton of people that watch all across the state, not just here in State College. And there's been some chatter. Yeah, there isn't an Academy Sports and Outdoors in State College, but this is a worldwide show. We have people in Dubai, we have people in Bangkok, we have people in York that are watching. So you should definitely check it out. Fun can't lose, and neither can you with tailgate gear from Academy. Nate Bauer joining us. Nate Bauer, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm terrible. I'm just awful. How are you?
I'm better now that you're here, Nate. Honestly,
Great.
Always gets better with a little more Nate Bauer.
Yeah, no, that was my music. Just FYI, my Sonos decided to
just
Sabrina Carpenter. It was really super poppy, but we're here. We did it. We're good.
Fitz, there's really what we're going to be talking about is James Franklin's press conference from yesterday, diving into all the different facets of it. You're going to be hearing portions of that if you didn't watch it live on replay here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel yesterday. We're going to be cutting out the most important parts, talking about those in both Between the Lines, and we're going to basically wrap up our Camp Battle series, which we started before when we previewed the big ones going into the 3 weeks before camp. Now we've got a resolution on a lot of these from what Franklin talked about yesterday, and of course Between the Lines. But before then, we got high school football, which means we had recruiting conversation. We're not doing a full-blown Fitz's recruiting update just yet. But Fitz, the weekend, there was some news both from the quarterback front and, of course, from commits and prospects that were performing. What stood out to you over the weekend with high school football and Penn State recruiting?
Well, if we're not going to be official, I'm going to put my guitar down. But no, I think the first thing that jumps out to me, Penn State commit Keemon Spell started his junior season over the weekend on Saturday. He's good. He's very good. And look, he's a high school running back that is running circles around his competition. They played Delaware Valley from Northeast PA. Keith Olsmer, former Penn State tight end Keith Olsmer, is the head coach there. And he ran past them like they were running still, or like they were standing still, excuse me. Took the opening kickoff back for a touchdown. I believe he scored 5 on the day, 293 yards. This kid is awesome. I mean, it's you can talk about rating running backs on a curve because of the value that they have in the pro game, absolutely. But when you see a special one, you know a special one. I think Keemon Spell's a special one. Penn State identified that early. We've been talking about him for a long time, but it's just fun to see him in pads. And yes, he's got gaping holes to run through at some point, but in other points, he's making a lot of guys miss and taking it to the house. I mean, this kid is the total package as a running back. Penn State has not struggled to find great backs, but man, he's right up there with the Saquon Barkley's, the Nick Singletons. Miles Sanders was the top back in his draft class, I believe. So, yeah, he's another really good one. Penn State's going to have to, put their claws in him, hold on to him. I like where Penn State stands in terms of holding on to him, but Notre Dame's coming after him. He's going to Ohio State next week to watch Ohio State, Texas, and he's got a full – I'd say a fairly full list of games that he's going to check out this fall. So that's going to be one that we continue to monitor. Like I said, he committed early for a reason, loves Penn State. He keeps coming back to it in all of his interviews. But at the same time, he's going to have some heavy hitters coming after him. So I think Penn State's okay right now, but at the same time, man, he's good. And everybody's going to notice that. And they have noticed that. And so Keemon Spell, we keep him up in the rankings, top 10 player in the class of 2027. And the keystone of Penn State's 2027 class so far.
Nice. I love the Keystone reference there. Quarterback, we actually didn't get a lot of reaction from you because of the timing with the news about Peter Bork committing to Michigan, but the time marches on, and Penn State needs to find a new solution at the quarterback position. There was a little bit of movement there this past weekend. So what did we learn on that front?
Yeah, I think the shift of focus goes to Keegan Croucher, another New England quarterback. Of course, Bork off the board to Michigan last month, earlier this month. And now Croucher is the guy to look at. Number 119 overall in the industry ranking, number 10 quarterback nationally. This is a kid that, has been up there and has thrown with Bork. I still think that Bork, in my mind, at least from what I saw from him, just a notch ahead, but not a big notch. Like, I think that Keegan Croucher is a top 10, top 15 quarterback in this class, and he'll continue to develop. He's got a big arm. He's got a top 3 that includes Penn State, Ole Miss, and Oregon. So geographically, he's all over the map, literally all over the map. And we're going to see what those visits bring about. So we've started to see in the class of 2027, the dominoes are starting to fall at quarterback. And, we thought Penn State was in a good spot with Bork, and then all of a sudden Michigan, swoops in. They had him on campus multiple times, and I don't think it was a quick last minute thing, but kind of took the momentum away from Penn State. Penn State's got some momentum with Keegan Croucher, but also they got to keep that, and they got to get that one over the top. So I wouldn't be shocked if he makes a fall decision. His schedule is a little bit different up there in New England, but at the same time, he's got some games to check out, over the next couple of months, and Penn State's one of those.
So we'll keep you updated on all that recruiting stuff here to start the show throughout the season. Of course, we'll have our recruiting show on Thursdays where we'll get into more of these things, including who's joining the Nittany Lions for games, including Nevada. I just saw Ryan Snyder put up something this morning about one of my favorite prospects from the camp season is going to be joining the Nittany Lions for this weekend's game. So if you're thinking, it's Nevada, nobody cares, I don't know. Anytime you can get players to campus, there's a good amount of opportunity there for the Nittany Lions to impress. And as Fitz has been talking about and Ryan have been talking about, better list shaping up for Nevada maybe than you would think, with Oregon just a couple weeks away. Fitz, you got one last thought here on recruiting?
No, I think that's pretty much the two that I wanted to hit on. I know Penn State commits and prospects started their seasons here. Good first outing for Harrisburg. You look all over the state, some really good games. So Kevin Brown and Messiah Mickens at Harrisburg were two that kind of jumped out. But check out on the site. Ryan's got some recaps, and I think it's going to continue to as other states start up their season. We're going to start talking about that a little bit more.
Game week. We're going to be getting into what James Franklin had to say in just 1 minute, but you got to make your plans for this weekend, which includes maybe some pre-game or day before pre-tailgating. Nate, jump in here and tell me about Antifragile and why fans should check out Antifragile Friday before. Maybe you're making an extended weekend, you're coming in and you're excited. You just dropped your kids off and you miss them and you want to come back and see them. Take them to Antifragile. Tell them why, Nate.
Yeah. Best bar, best beer, best cheesesteaks in State College, just kind of broadly speaking, but also convenient to Beaver Stadium as these things go. It's a short little walk up there to Beaver Stadium. So with the 3:30 kick Saturday, really noon, not a bad idea to have a beer at Antifragile. All of the beer that they make is made in-house on site. And it is excellent. Look, Fitz is the beer aficionado, but I dabble, right? I like a good beer. I like a hazy IPA, as the kids do. And they make tons of them. They make a bunch of varieties. The board is always changing. And it is, like I said, the best beer at State College. Out front, they have Uncle John's, which are cheesesteaks and are the best cheesesteaks in State College. I had one on Sunday. And that's kind of running here. We're having too many cheesesteaks lately, to be honest with you. Not in football shape. But yeah, Antifragile. Check it out. You can see if you're watching on YouTube. It is a great place to see friendly faces and drink great beer. So check it out.
Of course, as we mentioned earlier, this show is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Just to remind you, it's tailgate season. Nobody gets ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors. Swing by your local Academy store, shop online at academy.com. Grills, canopies, jerseys, and more. I'm also always interested in and more. And more is always my favorite. You can get all kinds of stuff. Be a watch party legend from gear from top brands like Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour. Undefeatable prices every single day. Be sure to check out Harrisburg and York locations like we mentioned earlier. Fun can't lose, and neither can you with tailgate gear from Academy. Okay. Nate, my favorite segment to quiz you on things is Between the Lines. We're getting to that right now.
They have both gotten reps with runs.
So this is interesting. Nate, are we at the end of Between the Lines? Because one of the most common comments from yesterday's press conference was, wow, James Franklin was really forthcoming with information. In the chat, we've been talking about it here. Are we still going to need your services as our James Franklin interpreter? Like, first off, do you agree that he was more forthcoming? And then secondly, what do you think if so?
Yeah, I think what's curious is he's had this long-standing practice of not wanting to do the depth chart before the start of the season. Right. The depth chart has always kind of been a sticking point for him publicly, which is funny. I mean, who cares? Right? I mean, if your opponent doesn't know the players that are playing in the game or doesn't know what to expect, then they're not actual D1 college football programs. But nonetheless, he virtually gave the depth chart yesterday. Right. All of the questions that were asked, or most of the questions that were asked about depth and how position battles kind of shook out through the preseason, he was mostly forthcoming. He said everything except for QB2. Obviously, I don't want to spill the beans here, but I think we expect Ethan Grunkmeyer to win that battle, and that was a conversation that the coaching staff was going to have with those guys yesterday on Monday. But other than that, it was Belgrave Shorter won the starting safety job opposite Zachy Wheatley. Kick return. Nick
do you
Singleton.
Do you read the rundown? We have a whole segment for that later.
Well, you got me going.
I did get you going. It's my fault.
You got me going. I was
fault.
saying what he was being talkative about. No, I thought generally speaking, he was very. Look, there is and this is the amateur psychologist total BS side of this, but like he's comfortable because he knows his team is good, and
that's what I was wondering.
That shines through.
We've seen James Franklin a little bit more forthcoming throughout the years, in spurts. But it tends to be around times when he feels like things are going well, right? Fitz, is that fair?
Well, no, he had a cheat sheet yesterday. We put out the depth chart on Blue White Illustrated before he went up there, so he had the ability to read off of that.
Bag was out.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I think when you're comfortable, you're more
sign up for $1.
Yeah, when you're comfortable, it's easy to be more forthcoming, and I think that they understand what they have in front of them the next couple of weeks. Like I said on this show, is yes, they're going to talk about 1-0. They're going to talk about this upcoming matchup, but they understand the next 3 weeks are very important times to sort of reestablish the foundation on that depth chart, well beyond those starters. So I think that that's really what he's looking at. And there are spots that are still up for grabs, and they're going to be up for grabs through basically the end of September. It's going to shift very quickly to Oregon at that point. But at the same time, you're figuring out wide receiver 5 and 6. You're figuring out, there's been a lot of talk about running back 3 and where that stands, but some of that stuff is still up for grabs. So I think that's what he's comfortable with. And the fact that he's not saying, hey, this guy is going to start, he mentioned Belgrave Shorter yesterday at safety, but how many other starting jobs were truly up for, up in doubt, really?
Yeah. How many surprises were there on a team that brings back so many players, especially on the offensive side of the ball? And a lot of the stuff that he discussed, a lot of the news that was broken yesterday, maybe we had that at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com last week. Maybe I was trying to tease that out of Fitz and Nate last week. And they held strong in terms of keeping that for people over on the message board. And that stuff is why people pay for Blue White Illustrated. So if you want to become part of the Penn State community with Blue White Illustrated, start for $1 for your first week and get a complimentary year of The Athletic included in your membership. Now, I still think there were some areas where James Franklin was talking a little bit around some of the finer points of what he really wanted to say, or maybe where he really wanted to avoid saying some things. Quarterback 2, as you guys have mentioned. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth in a minute as far as things we didn't learn yesterday. But Devonte Ross and the situation surrounding him, Nate, I want to get your impression of where things stand right now based on what he said, because he said a couple of different things that I felt like were not perfectly down the line of what to expect in the first couple weeks from Devonte Ross.
He had some bumps and bruises this summer that we were dealing with that impacted how involved he could be late in the summer and then also early in training camp. But he's ready to go. We'll probably rotate him a little bit more just because he hasn't had the full training camp and he hasn't had the full summer. But he's ready to go and has looked really good the last week or so. So we're expecting good things out of him. But, I think him and Liam Clifford will both rotate and both play significant reps.
So on a pitch count because he's still coming back, or on a pitch count because they want to get him up to speed and maybe he wasn't taking full contact for a while? How have you read this evolving situation with Devonte Ross so far?
Isn't what you just said the same thing?
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if there's still I would say like the difference being that he's still maybe has a nagging, lingering part of whatever happened, but he's good enough to play. Like he's not in danger of re-injuring anything, or he's fully cleared, he's fully healthy. He's just like, he hasn't been out there to earn the trust of the coaching staff, which, as we'll get to with some of these other conversations, is a big part of being on the field for Penn State.
Yeah, I think you're either cleared or you're not.
Right.
That's kind of how I see it. And so I'm reading that as he was cleared last week, right? It's when he says he's ready to go and has looked really good in the last week or so. That means that before last week, he was not cleared to that level, right? To the level that you want for him to be able to play in games. He got dinged up early in the summer, right? Late spring, after spring practice, and missed some time, right? And I mean, Franklin is saying it impacted how involved he could be late in the summer, and then also in training camp. So yeah, he missed a bunch of time and went through the processes that team doctors require to get a full, clean bill of health. Now has it, I think, because of all of that, right? In the same vein as what Anthony Donka, Ford probably in that boat. These guys that had to be brought along on that progression of coming back from something. You'll see translation. He will play all the time in October and November.
Right.
He will play some of the time in the next couple of weeks.
Gotcha. Fitz, I wanted you to take this one here.
Before you get that, I agree with Nate. I mean, you, why take the hits when you don't need to take the hits? Like you got to get him prepared for week 4, obviously, or I guess week 5, whatever. What are we considering Oregon? Because it's after
5.
So is that week 5?
5.
Yeah.
Be prepared for week 5, which I think you can do that on a pitch count. Like it's about saving that arm until you need it. And I think they have a pretty good idea of what he is because he did come in the spring, unlike Trevor Pena. He did come in the spring, was able to work through it. Then he missed a decent amount of time in the summer. Like that's kind of the downside of taking a guy from Troy who is, I don't want to call him underdeveloped, but Franklin said this a few times, didn't have the same opportunities to be developed from a physical standpoint as he did at Penn State. So missing a lot of that summer makes a big difference in terms of building him up, especially for a guy that's a little guy to begin with. So I think that you look at that whole body of work and you can say, okay, get him sometime. Don't put him in unnecessary situations like returning punts. Like, I think that that's something where you put yourself out there, and I think Penn State's going to be a little bit more aggressive with returning punts this year. But at the same time, yeah, you don't need to put him out there to get walloped by Nevada and all of a sudden you can't be ready for week 5 because you've re-injured something. Because you said something earlier, T. Frank, like, is he not at risk to re-injure? You're always at risk to re-injure. It's just a matter of feeling that out and feeling what you can do and what your max is. I think there's a similar thing here with Nate mentioned Alonzo Ford, Anthony Donka, Zariah Fisher even. So you've got guys that you're just kind of feel where the line is, get to the line, and hopefully you don't have to go much beyond that line to accomplish what you want as a team and accomplish what you want for your individuals. And
to also, as they want to have a better sense of where the passing attack stands going into that conference season and, get the good work without, as you guys mentioned, mitigating the injury risk for these guys or taking as many of those reps off them as they can while still getting the work that they need, which is something that he talked about, I think, last week. And if Ross doesn't play, you get Liam Clifford into the game, which, I mean, for our hits and our metrics on our site, it's great because people are so angry that he's on the team and alive. So I'm
alive.
He's the new Elsdon, man.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Locked
might make him the post-game show thumbnail for Nevada, just to see what happens, see how much of the building we can burn down.
Can I
go for it? Yeah.
I have to extend it because this is what I do. They paid good money for Devonte Ross, and so there is no establishing trust there, right? Like, he's a senior, has been around, has played a ton of football. Like, I think that the things that they see in practice, once you get to that level, are more than enough to inspire the confidence that it takes to get on the field. It's just a different
more
standard.
Timing than trust, really, I think is what we got.
So this next one, maybe I'll lead this one off of what I think, and then I'll throw it to you guys and see what you think. James Franklin answered a very long question, a very long response to Drew Allar's development from last year. So this is just a section of it, but still a little bit longer of a clip talking about where Drew Allar this year has more time to focus on football.
One of the things that I do think is probably an interesting little piece for you guys is we got a number of guys, probably about 10 guys this year, and Drew's one of them. There's an NCAA rule that if you only need 9 credits to graduate, then you can be under full-time status. So if you only need 6 credits to graduate, you only need to take 2 classes. If you only need 3 credits to graduate, you only have to take 1 class, and that's fine from an NCAA rule. It's been that way for a long time. But Drew and a number of our guys are under full-time status. So I think Drew's got 1 class left to graduate at Penn State, so creates a really good situation for him in terms of being the best player he can possibly be and graduate from Penn State. Because I think he's only in a situation where he only has to take 1 class, and we have a number of guys like that. So kind of explained that to the team the other day. Ideally, that's what they'd all like to do, right, is take enough classes each semester and in the summer to set their last fall on campus up where they're under full-time status. And this isn't the first time we've been in this situation, but I think that's one of the things I think was important to Drew, and his summer schedule impacted that too.
So when he's not, teasing Frank Bodani about his haircut, I do think James Franklin wants to answer the question and give you what you're asking for when you ask him something. And part of the question was almost a plea to, was there an instance, a situation or a scenario where you saw Drew Allar take a step or a development thing this offseason? James Franklin kind of offered that information about Drew Allar as an aside or a secondary or tertiary part of that comment. So Nate, Is that James Franklin trying to satisfy the question, or is that something that he wanted to bring up and found an avenue to do that, to mention, hey, my senior quarterback is basically a professional this year, which should also set a level of expectation for a spike in performance or whatever you might say might come from that?
Yeah. A couple of things. I say this with the most love in the world. Drew is boring. in the best way possible. He is the water that erodes the Grand Canyon over a million years. And so there isn't that thing, that sexy leader grabbing somebody by the helmet and really inspire, right? Like, it's just not him. That's not what he is. It's not what he's supposed to be. I don't think it's what Penn State wants. He is just simply steady. And so that anecdote, that lead to the story that all sports writers want, doesn't really exist for Drew. It's not there. It doesn't have to be there, because so much of what he is today is about the slow climb to get there over the last 4 years. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, this happens a lot, right? And I do think that it is an advantage that Penn State, like, it satisfies so many itches that James Franklin has to talk about academics as being part of the conversation of what you get at Penn State, right? That these guys, like, hey, Drew has been at Penn State for 3 years and he's got this last semester, but really, if he only has 3 credits left, he could have graduated before. Like, he could have already been done, if that was what they wanted. Point being, he only has to take three credits. He can live in the building. They've had a ton of guys who have been under these same parameters. Olu was in the same boat when he was that last year for him. So I just think that's, yes, it is a point of emphasis that Franklin likes to bring up, but also it's not a cover, but like, yeah, he does. If you're asking for what was the thing that you saw in preseason camp that made you say, man, this guy is different this year, that's not right. It's like almost, okay, he brought up the fact that he's faster and he's changed his body, right? That he's a better runner. It's not, Drew didn't rip off a 80-yard run, right? Like, it's not like, he slipped through the line and had this long carry that he outran all of the safeties. Like, that's not what it is. So this year it's a 14-yard run instead of an 8-yard run.
Right. Or he might run it a little bit more. He might actually keep it a couple more times. Fitz, how to the point here, how important is it to have a senior quarterback with only 3 credits? Like, how much of an advantage is that for a team that you have that leading your offense?
I'm curious how much we're going to hear about it this year, because he has the opportunity to basically shadow Andy Kotelnicki. Like, this is one of those things where I think James is saying that to emphasize what kind of time he has on his hands to put all into football. Like, I think that's where you go with that. And I think that's maybe setting him up for, like, what is he doing all the time and why isn't it football? But at the same time, I think it's kind of setting him up for, this guy is locked in and he's like LTFI or whatever, and he's ready to go. So I think that's what it comes down to. Nate, I have a question for you, since you're kind of an expert on this this shade here. How much do Drew's cheeks shape his reputation? And this is a kind of a serious question. He had the baby face and he's thinned out a little bit, but he's still got the flush cheeks or whatever. And I'm coming to you for obvious reasons. But everybody thinks he's a big kid, right?
Yeah.
And I think that he's trying to sort of buck that. And as you said it before, he's not particularly interesting. He doesn't say things that make anybody like crazy or anything like that. But how much is that maturity step what you see and what the nation sees? Because I see it all the time with the nation. It's like, yeah, this kid's not ready. He's not he's emotionally not ready for this. And he had the loss in the Orange Bowl. He looked pretty pedestrian there. So I'm just curious what we see close up versus what the national people have sort of latched onto, because it's easy to do that, right? It's really easy to do that.
I don't know what nationally people are saying about him. That's the truth. Is I can't figure out what the vibe is, because I've seen enough from NFL circles publicly. Daniel Jeremiah one is the one that stands out, kind of talking about how good he is and how prepared he is for this, and that with a few receivers that can make some plays for him, he's ready to do that, to be that next guy. So I don't know that it's treating him childlike as much as it is trying to figure out what he is. To me, that's where we stand. And I think Penn State thinks they know what he is. I think that we think we know what he is. I'm not sure that nationally people know what to do with him. But I don't watch a ton of other college football, but I've seen enough other players in college football to think he stacks up, right? The player that he is today, let alone the player that he can be as this season goes along and gets another shot in some of those moments. I understand that the grade was poor for Notre Dame. I don't put that game on him. I don't know how anybody can. Was he part of it? Yes, but it wasn't so glaring the way that I think it's been portrayed to be at times, to make it like, oh, well, in the biggest moments he fails. Penn State's team has come up short in those games. He was pretty good against Oregon, I thought. So yeah, it is, to me, it remains a wait and see thing against the top 1% of the schedule.
Yeah. So this is from Brad. He says, hello, boys. Game week. T. Frank, you broadcasting? If so, the BJC? Yes. To those questions, we are doing our tailgate show coming up on Saturday at 12:30, 3 hours before kickoff. We'll do a 90-minute show. It is the Penn State football tailgate show put on in conjunction with Seven Mountains Media. You can check us out. Producer Kyle from last year is now co-host Kyle. Landon has moved on to greener pastures, so it's going to be me and Kyle this year breaking down the game, talking to you about Penn State football, giving you the scoop heading into the game. So that is going to be live outside the Bryce Jordan Center ticket office at 12:30. Come say hello, and we will we'll have a good time outside the BJC. Although on game day I turn into a psycho, so if I don't seem friendly, it's not that I'm not friendly, it's that I'm in game mode. I went to the Big Ten championship game with my family in 2016. I drove out there with my sister and my brother-in-law, and they're like, is he mad? Is he like having a bad time? And it's just like, no, I was so anxious that I wasn't going to get to where I needed to go to do my job and have it done correctly that I just so say hi, but lower your expectations, I think, of who I am in that moment. That's all I want to say. Because I come away from some of those meetings, and I'm like, what? I hope I wasn't too mean. Kevin Payne says, keep up the great work. I miss who QB2 is, lols. We'll get to that in just 1 second, but I wanted to say thank you to Kevin for throwing out a super chat. We got another one there. I'm going to get to Fitz probably later in the show. We did our recruiting segment, so I want to make sure we get to what we need to talk about now. Unfortunately, we got to cut some topics. I want to talk about Zion Tracy, but I wrote about that yesterday at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and delved into James Franklin's answer and some of the things that he was saying without saying them over on the website. So we'll check that out in just a little bit. But right now, I want to get to basically what we learned from Franklin yesterday, which is a resolution to some of these camp battles that we've been following for a month now. Receivers. We learned more about the Mike linebacker. We learned about several other positions, including the kick return battle, which Nate was spoiling the surprise. I didn't get to run my graphic. Didn't have it in the order. It's fine. So you were talking about the thing everyone wanted to know, and you were doing it at the time when we should have been doing it, which is earlier in the show. So anyway, here's what James Franklin had to say about the Penn State wide receivers and the top 6 on the depth chart.
So a combination of Hudson and Howard. Howard's another guy that we look at, that we think is going to play. Haven't truly green-lighted him yet because we want more out of him on special teams. Pena and Denmark and Ross and Clifford. That's the 6 guys right now that I would say are part of that conversation. There's some other guys that you can make arguments, by the day. But that's probably the two deep going into week one for us, and feel good about it. Ross and Clifford will play a lot. I could see Pena and Hudson will determine that this week, whether it's a rotation or whether it's a tap system. We'll decide that as the week goes on. And then also, do we tag certain plays for certain guys, which we'll do that as well. So,
Fitz, let's start with Kobe Howard. Talk to me about the situation for Kobe Howard. We've seen him in that top group for the last 2.5 weeks of camp. James Franklin's still holding off on calling him a green light. What are the nuances there when he's talking about special teams?
Let's talk numbers first, because the last couple of years it's been 3, 4 guys that he's been talking about before the season as they feel okay with. So now all of a sudden there's 6 guys, and I know they brought in 3 fresh guys, and Clifford's back and the 2 young guys, but that's giving you an indication, and maybe it's the schedule, but they're going to play 6 guys. And I'm excited to see it. I think the Ross decision does come into that a little bit, but at the same time, they're confident in Kobe Howard. I think Tysier Denmark is a guy that when you get him out on the game field, I think he's going to do better than he does on the practice field. There are those guys sometimes when you kind of get them out of the repetition, the practice thing, they just step up. They're gamers. That happens. Zach Swinak's an all-timer here at Penn State for that. It's just kind of, I didn't expect to make a Zach Swinak reference. It's nothing to do with your hair or face or anything like that. It just came out of me. So, but no, you've got 6 guys that you feel pretty good about. The positions kind of mesh a little bit. We had a question, I think it was Super Chat from the show last week about, do you put Ross in the slot? What do you do? I think you put Pena in the slot. I think that's why he's there. By the way, he's much smaller than you think. I learned that last week in my first viewing of Pena in person. Because you've got Pena, you've got Denmark, you've also got Kobe Howard that can play in the slot, but you've also got 12 personnel where you have to work around and move guys around. So these guys have to be versatile pieces. I think you've got that. I think you got more of a traditional X in Kyron Hudson, and then from there you've got a lot of movable pieces. And to Hudson's credit, he can play those positions too. So I just think reading the tea leaves, and we'll say it again, we're a wait and see organization on these entire receivers. I think that Nate, you're the same way. T. Frank, you're the same way. Like, we think they can do it. We're not going to tell you that they can do it until they can do it. And I think that that's kind of that's how it's been laid out in front of this season, I think. So yes, you feel pretty good about that. Kobe Howard is a guy that they're confident in making plays. But as a freshman, it's about stringing together continuity between plays. You may have mentioned, or you may have taken note of a mention of special teams with freshmen that aren't quite green lighted. I think that comes into play here. There's a couple of instances there. So I think that they feel confident in those guys as receivers. I do think Kobe ends up as a green light, really talented kid that can do a lot of things in the short to intermediate game, and then make some guys miss. They don't really have that otherwise. So I think he does eventually get the green light, but at the same time, work through it, see what you got in the first couple of weeks. And if you have to pull him back, pull him back.
Nate, any thoughts here on the wide receiver room, the breakdown, and how they go into this first game? Considering maybe you've got Devonte Ross on a bit of a pitch count, how do you feel about this heading into this particular game? Better or worse kind of than when we were at the start of training camp? Or the same, because it kind of felt like it played out how we expected in terms of who the starters are and then who the players are that are in the conversation.
Yeah. I think it's about the same. I think it would behoove Penn State to have any of those second year, first year guys, like any additional ones that can maybe enter the chat and just be part of the conversation. But ultimately, and this bears out over and over, I'm going to contradict myself immediately because that's what I do. You really need 4-ish, right? Like, that's who's gonna get the volume production. But I do think that having 5, 6, 7, potentially 8 alleviates those games where do you trust that next level to, like, when Penn State's up 3 touchdowns, which I think is a standard that is fair and is expected at least out of these next 3 games, and for quite a few others on the schedule, that you have viable players, right? Not just throw them out there and wish and a prayer that they have serviceable players that can develop, that can gain valuable reps, and that you trust to be out there and not put you in a bad spot. Because again, broken record here. It is about the mistakes, how they happen, when they happen. And you can be right. You can be right 90% of the time as a receiver, and that's not good enough if the 10% you're wrong lead to pick sixes.
Yeah, or sacks.
Right?
Like it
Or
doesn't
sacks,
need to
whatever.
be as dramatic as a sack or as a pick six. If you're not in the right spot and the quarterback has to eat the ball, now it's 2nd and 17. Last question here, because I do want to get to some of the other stuff, including our Nevada preview, which is really just more of like what are we looking for from this team. I was trying to find a more in-depth question here in the chat because it was a conversation earlier, but what I found quickly was Cyphered Carbon just saying Tysier Denmark, period. Fitz, how important is Tysier Denmark? And I guess the more of what I'm driving at is you got 3 senior receivers that we've discussed, and they've talked about Trevor Pena getting bigger and faster and stronger in the Penn State weight program, but these were guys that you would say generally are near the top of what they were expected. And on film, they're all good receivers, but we haven't been talking about any of these guys as potential game breakers necessarily. Even the conversation around Devonte Ross is not that he is Omari Evans level speed merchant. Who is out there that you think has more of that upside or more of the can add some game breaking elements into this group? Or is it one of those top transfer receivers that we just mentioned, and you think differently than that?
Yeah, I think Pena can do it in a different way. I don't think he's going to break off a 70-yarder and outrun everybody, but at the same time, I think Pena's got the ability to create enough separation to give him time after the catch to make up some ground and to eventually turn that into yak yards, which again is something they're sorely lacking, and I think that Howard offers that as well. But it's going to take more time for him to get in it. Denmark is interesting because he's just very skilled. He's not the most athletic guy. He's gotten faster since he's gotten to Penn State, but he's just very skilled and able to, like Pena, create separation, not by outrunning someone, but by running the correct route. Now, he's got to catch the ball consistently. When you take a look at what the guys do at the top of the depth chart, they do it really well. I mean, we had that conversation about Clifford from early in the chat, but he doesn't really drop the ball. Like, the thing about the receivers last year was not really the dropping of the ball. Like they really improved on that from 2023. It's the everything else is, the creating separation, all that stuff. And that's where the production versus potential kind of comes into it. And you've got guys that are or have been productive albeit at different levels. And I think that's really what Penn State's going to lean on just to bump up the floor. And I think Denmark can do that, but for Denmark and Howard and for Anthony Ivy and for Peter Gonzalez and for Aaron Enterline, a name that really hasn't been tossed around, like this is an audition over the next couple of weeks where you can stake a claim for one of those 5-6 spots. So Nate's right in that you talk about 4, and I think they feel pretty good about their 4, but there's actually gravy to work with at 5-6 right now, where those guys can be guys that can make plays. And that's kind of the difference of what you've had over the last couple of years.
And there's that fluidity, too, of Kobe Howard, you feel like has the ability to play a couple of different spots. I would say the same thing with a couple of the other starters. And so if you need guys to have a role on the team that maybe have those height, weight, speed questions, like Lee W. asks, whatever happened to Peter Gonzalez, never got over his injury. So there's been a little bit of bumps and bruises for him, but he's been battling back and, kind of working in that second group of trying to do what Fitz just said of proving that he's reliable. But for him, he's a smart football player. His reliability is making sure he's out there consistently and available to be a part of the conversation.
Can I add just one note? I think that the next 3 weeks for Kobe Howard are important for him, yes, but for the offense as a whole. Because if he can put something on film that scares people, that's a catchphrase that Franklin likes to use all the time. But if he's noticeable and draws attention, that sets things up for him to be on the field more, yes. But also at that point, it doesn't matter necessarily how many of those plays he's actually making. It's the threat of that
Right.
that becomes potent for Penn State's offense and for Andy Kotelnicki. And again, like, I think that this is a huge piece of what Penn State sees themselves as this season. Like, they would love for the passing game to be dialed and good in the first couple of weeks so that the running game can be dominant the rest of the season. Right? Yeah. Like, if you put enough fear into opponents, you give yourselves the opportunity to really do what you want, or to do either.
There is this, I think, misconception about Andy Kotelnicki that he wants to feed tight ends, that he wants to feed running backs, and in the passing game specifically. And he's not opposed to doing that. But if you look at some of the best offenses he's put together, the run game feeds off of a dangerous passing attack, which is led by wide receivers. Now, again, he will go to where the talent is and build the offense around that. But the best iterations, the one that got him hired here at Penn State, was 50 catches by 3 separate receivers, creating explosive plays. They averaged like 17 yards a catch. So the goal is not to just feed Tyler Warren 100 targets. It is to have a diverse passing attack that threatens every level of the field. Speaking of the deepest level of the field, here's Penn State head coach James Franklin talking about their safety battle. And I want to get Fitz's perspective on this one on the other side.
Yeah, so right now, Belgrave Shorter is the starter across, from Zaki. But those other 2 safeties we plan on playing a lot. We feel like we got 4 safeties we can win with. Belgrave's probably a guy that, there wasn't a lot of conversations going on outside of the Lash building, but led us in interceptions and turnovers, this training camp. Been very, very consistent about how he's gone about his business. So he has earned that spot. But the other 2 guys will play a lot, and we need them to play a lot.
So, Fitz, I want to ask you something that's in the chat, and I think James Franklin spelled it out there, but there are some concerns from Penn State fans. Is this a concern that King Mack and Dejon Lane did not take that position in the battle, and that suddenly a third player entered the chat and won it? Or is it a positive that now they have 4 players that you feel like you can trust, as James Franklin outlined? How do you view the positive or the negative, glass half full, half empty view of this particular battle?
The positive, and I've always been really high on Antoine Belgrave Shorter, is that he went out and won it. And he won it by making the fewest mistakes and making the plays. He led the camp in preseason camp in interceptions. I don't know if Franklin said that yesterday or not, but that's something we reported before. And I got to give it to Nate here. He was on Belgrave Shorter about 2 weeks ago before me, and I hate that so much. But yeah, that was one of those ones that just kind of he took off as camp went by. And linebacker and safety are so difficult from a mental perspective. And you've got Belgrave Shorter as a redshirt freshman. You've got Lane as a true sophomore, so the same age. You've got Mack, who is in his 2nd year at Penn State, despite being a junior, because that year at Alabama just was not good for anyone. And so you've got relative youth. The roster may not say it with Mack, but you've got relative youth back there that have to learn a new defense, that have to learn what they're doing. Zakee Wheatley being back there is a great thing for all of them. But at the same time, it's about who's going to make the fewest mistakes. I believe Franklin or was it might have been Knowles mentioned missed assignments a week or 2 ago. That's where it stems from, is the guy that's going to be there to make the play more often than not, rather than the guy that's going to go out and make the most plays. So I think that's what you look at when you're looking at safety. And Belgrave Shorter has risen up. I still feel confident in the athletic ability of those guys that are also there. You hope that they have 4 that they can roll with, but I'm still kind of on the fence about safety just because you don't know.
Yeah. And the aspect there that I think is interesting from the safety position is one that flew out of my head. I had to wrap up there nicely. What I want to do now is I want to move on to the linebacker discussion, because James Franklin, when talking about helmet communication, revealed a little bit of the plan at linebacker, which, again, not necessarily a surprise, but I think on the other side of it, we can learn some things about the linebacker depth.
And that will be, a combination of who's on the field, but that'll be Campbell and DeLuca, most likely, those 2 guys, because one of those 2 guys will be on the field. That'll be a little bit of the challenge, because we think DeLuca and Campbell not only can be Mike linebackers, but we also think DeLuca can be the Will. So how do we make sure that he's got a second helmet if he's on the field and you don't have two green dots on the field? That's a little bit of the gymnastics, some of the things with that we have to do based on the rules.
What I wanted to say, now that I had a second, is Antoine Belgrave Shorter, going baback to safety for a second, was a guy that didn't even necessarily want to play safety, but he embraced the opportunity, loves to tackle, wanted to play corner. Now he's, the starter week 1 after switching the position last year. So just shows you how all these things can change. And speaking of changing, as much as some things change, they stay the same. Dom DeLuca playing Mike linebacker, but also having a plan to have him on the field as a will linebacker at times, which feels like that pushes the Keon Wiley discussion a little bit further down the depth chart, doesn't it? Because Tony Rojas is going to be your starter there. And then if you're splitting time with Dom DeLuca playing both positions, Fitz, I'll come back to you on this one. How do you think that shakes out with how many linebackers are available and they trust?
No, I think that's just like, hey, if we need him in that spot, we're going to put him in that spot. DeLuca, that being. So I think that's really what that is. I think that's more about his versatility and his usefulness for having both those guys out there, more so than that. And Nate brought up a point. I don't want to call it a good point, but after the press conference, he was asking about potentially the 4-3 if they get an Iowa or they get somebody that they're going to have to play a third linebacker against. Campbell obviously goes in there, and I think he goes in the middle, and you can move those other two guys around. Rojas has played, I guess the Sam has been shot off into oblivion here, so you can have Rojas play that field linebacker position and go from there. So I think that it's about being able to be versatile. I don't know it's as much about Wiley, although Jim Knowles has suggested that the 3 guys that he trusts are those 3 guys that we mentioned. So, that's where I'm going with that. I don't think it's a big thing. And to be honest with you, the Mike Will type thing, I mean, this is not neck roll Mike. This is not over the top of the center, stop the run Mike. This is 2 guys in the box that essentially do a lot of the same things. So you're looking at being versatile and being able to play both positions is not as much of a stretch as it used to be.
It's more in coverage where you have different responsibilities in coverage, where a Mike linebacker might cover a different player than a Will linebacker who you have as your athlete. Might see more matchups in the slot, might see more matchups with, a running back or an athletic player, etc. So, the run responsibilities are fairly similar. And in this defense, when they play that hybrid safety role, where we expect Zakee Wheatley to be playing kind of a pseudo Mike linebacker position, well, guess who bumps out to the Sam? Our friend Dom DeLuca, who used to play safety and used to play Sam before moving into Mike linebacker. So there's a little bit of, to Fitz's point, there's a lot of overlap with these positions in this particular defense because they want to use a lot of this 4-2 look, which is something I'm going to ask James Franklin about later. Neither here nor there. But Nate, do you have any follow-ups here? I want to get to what we didn't learn and then, of course, get our preview, and we've got about 6 minutes.
Sean and I have a 20-year running joke that I don't know anything about linebackers because it's true.
No, it's more football in general than just
all of football. But why do they have to Sam, Mike, and Will? Just stop it. Just stop confusing me.
I will not. First off, I will not. I feel targeted by this conversation that we've had. I feel personally attacked, and I will not stop. I will not.
That's fair.
It's not your fault. It's football's fault. I don't think it's necessary. Give them each a name that makes sense. Stop calling them boy names. It's dumb. I don't like it.
Sam, S, strong side linebacker. Mike, middle linebacker. Also has the Mike communication. Will, weak side linebacker. There you go.
And then it's all flipped in the Penn State's old defense. So
let's talk about what we didn't necessarily find out from James Franklin. Some of the position battles that either he did not divulge or we just didn't ask about. Because a lot of how this works is you ask him a question, he answers the question. There are only 15 questions in the press conference, so we can't ask about every single battle. Backup quarterback. To go all the way back to Kevin Payne's question about backup quarterback, he was asked about that, Nate, and he did not divulge that particular situation. How have you read this, and I'm going to ask you the dumb question to give you give me the right answer.
Yeah.
Why is this position different where they didn't talk about this with those players as opposed to Antoine Belgrave Shorter? He's a starter at safety. We learned that. Why is quarterback different here?
Yeah, but, and I wanted to bring this up during the ABS conversation. He talked as much about King and Lane as he did about Belgrave in that answer, right? Why? Because feelings get hurt, right? Like feelings get hurt. Players don't like losing a job, right? Or losing a battle. And so this idea of inclusiveness is important really throughout the roster. Like, hey, all these guys are going to get used. But yeah, QB2 is, he set it up in August at the beginning of the month as, hey, this could go into the 2026 preseason. And I think there were shades of that in his answer yesterday, but also a more of a look, we've seen enough, right? Enough has been established over this span of time to be able to say, in a way that they couldn't in spring practice, because there wasn't that separation necessarily in spring practice, that this preseason provided enough of a data set to make these decisions. Look, like I don't think it can be stressed enough that these decisions are not made like, but which way is the wind blowing? It is clear, right? Like there are, or it can be clear. Field goal kicking, punting. There's there's data that backs this stuff up, and it almost absolves coaches of having to make decisions, because you can put it right in front of these guys and just say, look, this is what your touchdown to interception ratio was. This is your completion percentage. These are all of the numbers that we have collected over camp, and that's why this is the guy. The number
You and
2.
your analytics. Got to go with gut.
I've always been an analytics guy.
So just quickly, a couple of the other positions that we did not learn about because we didn't ask about: running back 3, defensive tackle 4 and 5, which we've kind of covered a good bit on that particular topic during training camp. And then the one Fitz that I'm still interested in: right guard and right tackle. Again, I think we know where the wind is blowing, to use Nate's analogy there, with this particular lineup decision. What do you, just quickly before we get into our preview, what are you looking? Is that interesting to you? Is the right guard, right tackle combination an interesting one for you as to who wins that battle for those spots?
Wins the battle, yes. The battle will be won in the bye week, I think. So after these first 3 games. So a spot like running back 3, I think you're going to see after Nick and Katron get done their stuff. And, you know, we're talking as if they're going to be out of the game in the third quarter. You never know how it's going to play out. Like, I think that's number one. But Cam Wallace, I think, has earned the first audition. But, you know, Quentin Martin is really physically talented despite battling injuries all the time. Corey Smith, we love the flashes we saw from him. And even you could find yourself in a situation, this is probably a bigger picture thing, with freshmen. We think about these 3 games up front. Well, they get 4 games to, you know, sort of save if they're going to play red shirt or they're going to keep their red shirts, and that's fine. So you can go 3-1. You can go the first 3 games of the season, then put it in the bag, and then figure out a game later on in the year. Or you can pick 2 of those games in the first couple of weeks and then save 2 games. Because we've seen, you know, it's useful, you know. Belgrave Shorter played in 7 games last year. You know, he played in 4 regular season games and was in the playoffs for special teams. So ramping those guys up at the end of the year to get them to play special teams, to cover kicks in the playoff or whatever may come, it makes sense to do it at the end of the year. Now, that is big picture, first world problem type things that Penn State's dealing with. And that's kind of the story of camp to me, is like the stuff that they're dealing with is not going to change the course of the season for sure. But it's also, but it's more about filling cracks, filling the spots that they need to fill when they get to the Novembers and then eventually December, January. So I think there's that. You're going to see guys rotated at defensive tackle 4 and 5, guys, Ty Blanding and Owen Wafel are the 2 that you look at right there. Then you're going to probably see a little bit of a break. Backup quarterback we talked about. Guard and tackle is interesting to me because, you know, James Franklin said yesterday we're going to probably see more of TJ Shanahan than we expected to see. Now, Javen Williams coming off an injury. Egan Boyer's coming off an injury. You got guys that are banged up that you don't want to throw to the wolves, essentially. But at the same time, that gave time for TJ Shanahan to make some moves. And it seems like he's done that. So you got 7, eventually probably going to be 9 guys that you feel good about playing on the offensive line. again, it's a good problem to have if you're Penn State, but you also got to figure out, hey, is Donka going to be the starting right guard? What's that do with Cooper Cousins? Does it make him float with center, the other guard position? What does that do with Nolan Rucci? Does that make Rucci not expendable, but does that mean that Rucci can go over and play left tackle for Drew Shelton? All these moving parts are going to be so fascinating to watch because number one, this isn't receiver. You're not subbing in guys in and out throughout the drive, but you want to feel those pieces sort of gel. And at the same time, get those younger guys in, get Garrett Sexton in there, get, some of the younger interior linemen in, maybe play Michael Troutman, Owen Alasini, those guys, to see what they've got, because that's what this schedule does. And again, it's us being jerks to Nevada and to FIU and to Villanova, but at the same time, use this time wisely and you can build your 1 to 105 asterisks, and figure out where you're going to look long-term on this season.
I want to say this one here. There's a bit of a crack here. I want to get at least 2 minutes of preview because that's what we promised people. Although, in the end, this has all been a preview for Nevada because these depth chart conversations are going to be continuing into the game this weekend. Ryan says Belgrave shorters from Mandarin High School. Penn State should look at sophomore wide receiver Bryson Wright, number 1 player in 2028. He's seen it as a freshman, and he's a stud, says Ryan. So appreciate that. Wanted to get that.
Ryan's correct with that evaluation. He is awesome. He's the kid that popped up over the summer playing 7-on-7 when he made a catch that I don't think is physically possible. It was a backhand, one-handed over his head. It was ridiculous.
Oh my!
He made an Allen Robinson catch on Friday night, I think it was, for Mandarin, that was in the same spot, the same sort of horizontal catch. He's really good. Penn State's looking at him. Everyone else is going to look at him as well.
Yeah.
So, I would not rest on that one. And, I think more likely Ohio State's going to be in the mix for that one. And I hate to give you guys the satisfaction of knowing that's where that's going to go every time, but it's a wide receiver. Ohio State has carved out a reputation for themselves that's going to put them on the radar of every wide receiver like Bryson Wright.
So here's we get out of the show. Last thing I want from you guys is 2 things that you're looking for this weekend from Penn State football against Nevada. I'll do a full show tomorrow about Nevada's defense and their offense and what you need to know and all those things to maybe give you an idea of who might make the plays for Penn State. It's a shocker it's going to be the running backs. But Nate, what are 2 things that you're looking for from Penn State football this week that you want to say, okay, despite it being a lopsided affair, these are great signs for Penn State football, or maybe vice versa?
I'm just going to change it to one thing. I'm breaking the rules. But no, just taking care of business and establishing a huge lead and then getting the subs in. I cannot stress it enough that I think so much of Penn State's potential this season rests on having that happen early in the season, right? Just working those angles, getting steady development. They don't have to start the season at West Virginia this year, right? They don't have to start the season at Auburn. So you get these 3 games. They don't leave State College until October. like this is the window. And so I will repeat myself next week and the week after as well, though I do think Villanova is, I'm not going to say it, more of a challenge, but it's fine.
Cliffhanger.
Anyway.
Yeah, for 2 weeks.
Yep.
Fitz.
Yeah, I don't think there's many fans that like this schedule, but if you're going to schedule like this, use it as such. And I think that's what Nate's trying to say here is that you've got the opportunity, you're 45-point favorite for a reason, and you try and get the most out of that and try and get your execution down, because we talk so much about receiver highlight tapes, guys running fly patterns and beating high school defensive backs. And you can't take much from that. But when you see guys that can execute what they're supposed to execute, run routes the way that they're supposed to run routes, it gives you a better idea of what that team can actually be. So I'm not thinking that Penn State needs to send the ball over top just to get points or whatever it's going to be, or to, it would be wonderful to see Nick Singleton do an 80-yard run, but at the same time, you want to see the execution that gets you there, because that is what it's going to get this machine in line for September 27th.
I will close out with, I want to talk about all the things I've seen in training camp, spring practice that, are scheme specific. things that we haven't talked about because those are the house rules and try to respect the house rules that Andy Kolnicki's been cooking up this offseason. I want to be able to talk about some of those things and some of the changes in the Penn State offense. And really, that's the thing I'm looking for. What are the changes in the Penn State offense and what are the new personality traits in this team? Because I do believe, and James Franklin even said yesterday, they're not a team that wants to hide anything necessarily on offense or on defense. They just want to get better at what they do and then make you prepare for everything in Andy Kolnicki's offense, which is a lot of different things. And then defensively, kind of the same thing. I want to see what the difference between a 4-3 and a 4-2-5 is because James Franklin has talked about that a lot this offseason. When you play nickel 88% of the time, which is what they did last year, I don't know the difference between a 4-3 and a 4-2 functionally, but maybe we'll begin to see that this weekend. And one last thing. Go for it.
And T. Frank, you can have missed assignments against Ohio State. You can have them against Notre Dame, but you can also have them against Nevada. Like this is a situation where you've got younger players. We talked about the safeties before, where you're going to have to be on top of things and be in the right spot. You might not necessarily make the play, but be in the right spot because the next time that play comes your way, you can make it. So I think that's what you look at defensively, especially right up the middle with those linebackers and those safeties.
Yeah, young players are obviously a part of that conversation in the later parts of the game, which we'll be checking out, and that's going to be, I think, a big focus for me in our evaluation of what's new, and then, of course, afterwards with our film study of how the young players play. But here's the most important thing for most fans. Saturday, 78 degrees, partly sunny, pleasant, good weather for tailgating, says this weather app, who knew exactly who they're talking to when I read that out. So, wear your sunscreen. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah. And this is not just an intervention for Nate. This is for everyone. Yeah.
I am going to eventually shame you into wearing sunscreen, Nate, because I care about you. That's the main thing.
This isn't a sunscreen thing, guys. No. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's it. I don't want to go any further. I don't want to get anybody riled up here at the end of the show because we got to get going. Thank you to everybody. This has been an awesome show. The chat's been great. You guys have been excellent here on the show as always. So we'll be back tomorrow. Let's do it again, huh? Me and Greg are going to be back here talking more Penn State, Nevada preview, and of course previewing practice coming up tomorrow night. We'll talk to you then.